years old.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. So, 40 years old. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah, changed my life. Yeah, making hajj really cooled me out after that Salafi experience.
That was also the period that Masjid al-Rahmah started to form.
Right. Well, we used to meet at Hopkins, the Islamic Society of Baltimore. Used to meet at Hopkins, and I used to go to all their affairs, and they had some nice programs teaching Arabic and different things. With Dr. Shafi and Dr. Awad and different ones, that was really nice. But
and so you went with a group from them to Hajj, or you went?
No, oh God, in order to go to Hajj, of course, you have to get a visa from the Saudi Arabian embassy, right? So you submit some form and you do some song and dance and you send it to them, and then they send it back and they said, no, I couldn't get the visa because I was a single woman and I had to have a mahar or whatever they call it. And I thought, well, that's impossible. I have no father, husband, brother, son. You're making it impossible. So I put on my full regalia. I had just made this beautiful hooded cape, navy blue cape. I had made it, I learned from my family, right, how to sew. But, and I had this beautiful navy blue outfit and this beautiful, whole regalia, I go over there to the embassy, make an appointment. And I remember they took me into this big room with all these calligraphies, Arabic stuff all over the place, all the, beautiful Arab stuff everywhere, Islamic stuff. And the consul or the ambassador wasn't there. It was the consul. He was somewhere traveling around. And I told him, you can't deny me this visa because I have no family that's Muslim. So you're saying I can't go.
Right.
It's impossible. And here's my letter from Dr. and Mrs. Shafi, who live in Minna, and he's a scholar and teaches at the King Faisal College or something. And they have, invited me to come and stay with them and make hajj with them. So, there you are. Why can't I get my visa? I wore him down. He gave it to me. So I went on my own by myself.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. It was hard. And I got to Mecca.
I could just see you there yelling at him now.
well, there was this guy that was on the bus or the plane or some American guy, and he was trying to put the moves on me, right? And he was this white, ugly guy with all these whiskers and everything, and he was just a pain, and I just wanted to get away from him, right, and so when we landed finally in Mecca, I wanted to get away with him as fast as I could, and somebody, I went, I don't know how, I got caught up somehow, and they were trying to tell me, well, you had to give your passport, and you had to this. I mean, I don't know, some hotel or someplace I ended up, because it was very confusing, I mean, Mecca today is nothing like it was then. It was like this little town with all these little narrow streets and shops and this and that, and you couldn't find your way around. It was a maze.
I'm going to say it was much more beautiful than
Probably was in certain ways, But anyway, they somehow got my passport. And but I was able to make a call to my family, the Shami family, and they came and got me and rescued me because I'm sitting there with this horrible guy, and but they had my passport. That was the bad part about it. We had to come back and go through some rigmarole and get my passport back. But it all worked out. But anyway, I stayed with them. And they had a whole group of people staying with them. We were all sleeping on sleeping mats on the floor. It was really kind of fun. And mostly they were Pakistanis, and so they were all speaking Urdu and everything. And they were so impressed with this American Muslim, It was really funny. But the person that I really hooked up with, the one couple was some relative, and they had like a teenage son. about 16 or something, and we really hooked up with each other, and we clung to each other through the whole thing. Because going to the harem was fine, because we went on these little jitneys, and they would always go in the evening, so you'd have Maghrib and Isha, and it was really nice. But the hajj part, was really hard. It was really hard, and there's a part in the hajj. I remember where we just slept on the road practically, and it was all these trucks and this noise and the terrible smell of the gasoline and everything, I think it was where you had to pick up the stones or something like that. But then when we went for this, because then they were still doing this, you could still go and pick your animal and have it sacrificed.
Right.
Didn't I tell you this?
No.
I didn't tell you this. Oh, so this boy, and I can't remember his name, God bless his soul, he's a grown man with grandchildren by now, but we were clinging to each other, and they said they were going to go, and because we had like 10 people in our group or whatever, you could get a cow, and have a cow sacrifice for the whole group, and so they were going to go, Dr. Shafi and whoever the other guys were, and I said, and I'm going too. No, it's too much. You don't want to. I came all this way. I'm going to see everything and do everything. Please don't try to keep me from it. So they let me come, and I'm with this boy, right? And we're together going through the whole thing because it was like a war zone. Blood and carcasses everywhere. I saw a camel being sacrificed.
Yeah.
You know how
different.
they do that?
Yeah, they spear it on each side.
Well, he's standing up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then the cow that we had, they had a special place where they put him over something so blood will run out and everything. And I don't even remember if they gave us packets or anything. But it was just a mess. You can't. It was horrible. It was really horrible, but I was glad I had gone.
Of course.
And seen it all and known what happened. But even in that time, I don't know if you even got to keep the meat. They might have put it in a big freezer and distributed it or something in those days. I don't know what they do now. I have no idea, But at least we got to see the sacrifice and be part of the sacrifice. That was important, to me, And
did you stay? Is this when you became a librarian in Jeddah? Or?
I think somebody might have asked me at that point, put me in touch with somebody or something. Did I want to come back to work there or something? Would I be interested or something like that? And of course I said yes, I would be,
They promised to teach you Arabic and never did.
Oh, right. That whole thing. I knew when I went up there to get my Iqama, you have to get a work visa. And I went to New York to get my Iqama, and I should have known there was not a woman in sight. And I stood there in line for the longest. I was the only person there, and everybody ignored me. All these guys in their white thobes and their Arab headdresses in New York.
Right.
I always thought that was so stupid to wear that kind of a headdress in New York City. Why? Big us, But anyway, I stood there, until finally, and the guy who finally talked to me, he wasn't a Saudi, he was Lebanese or Syrian or something other thing, but it was a doctor so-and-so, and he told me, oh yes, blah blah blah, everything's going to be beautiful and fine, and you're going to be our representative of Johns Hopkins in Jeddah. Oh, what a crock. It was, it really was, worst job of my life, really. If I had had any idea what those people were really like, and I understand they're worse now. All the good ones leave. When as much as they can, they might have a house there. They stay there sometime just to keep, part of that life. But they go to Europe or wherever as often as they can. Maybe it's different now, but I doubt it.
I don't think so.
This guy that's running things, he's worse than the ones that were there before. The ones that were there before were just in some other world from the 19th century or 18th century or something. You know, I don't know. It was an experience. And going to Taif, that was wonderful. Because that experience has stayed with me, and that was such an important part happening for our prophet when he went to Taif. That really changed his life, and that's when Allah gave him the Miraj, the Isra Miraj.
After that,
afterwards for his, and so going to Taif was really a wonderful experience for me. That made me feel very close to the prophet, and that part of his life has been felt very close to what he went through there, and all of that has been a really beautiful part of knowing him for me, because the people in Taif were very nice, I went with a bunch of Americans. I was the only Muslim, and I used to have these outfits that were sort of American style, kind of sarwal kameez things, but they were American style, not. And I would wear my little scarf, just like Audrey Hepburn style, I called it, and then I would wear my abaya like a cape.
Right.
Just over my shoulders. If I went somewhere, I could close it all up. Otherwise, it was just like a cape, and I could walk around, and people would say, but they were cool with it, because as soon as I opened my mouth, they said, an American. Can we sell you this? Would you like to buy this?
Sure.
You're a Muslim American. Oh, give us a blessing, whatever. They just fell in love with me, it was wonderful,
It was unique.
I was unique back in those days. But Taif, you go around this escarpment. You go up, because Taif's on a high plateau, and you go around this escarpment, and, it's a straight drop down. It's a scary ride. I can remember that.
That's why when the Muslims put it under siege, they couldn't break this. They couldn't get through. They actually abandoned the siege.
Right. Because it's way up there, and it's all mountains and valleys and very hard. Even then, it was hard driving. It was scary driving up there. Yeah.
How long was you a librarian in Saudi?
Just a year.
Just a year.
Yeah. It was just too crazy. I could have stayed. Renewed my contract and all of that, they weren't paying me anything, they weren't treating me well. It was like, and
you
my
was
mom,
a woman and an American.
And they didn't, it wasn't just that, it was just them. They were nasty, arrogant people. Really. The ones that I got to meet, most of them, not all of them, of course, thank God, but enough of them that you just got to shiver. But, no, my mom needed me.
Alhamdulillah.
I've had that feeling that I used to call her once a month. Then it was very expensive to call.
Yeah, and you'd have to go get the thing to go to the phone center.
Right,
it was
exactly,
a lot,
exactly. And so I used to get to talk to her once a week. I used to send her cards and letters and stuff, but still. So she wanted me to come back, and she was worried about me because I was there when the Islamic Revolution happened, and they took the hostages. You remember that?
Yeah, well,
you were around.
I was very young,
yeah,
but yes.
And I remember they told us, all the Americans, to be ready to leave on a moment's notice. They even pulled some ships up in the Red Sea there, that we could be evacuated, and the embassy and the consulates were burning all the documents and all of this, and so it was a kind of a dangerous time, or it seemed to be a dangerous time for Americans, in that part of the world, and so my mom was really worried about me being over there. She didn't want me to go in the first place, but she knew I had a bit of an adventurous spirit, so it was just time to come home and be with Mom.
So this leads us into the 80s.
And that's when I did move in with Mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you lived with your mom until she passed away.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, when did she pass away? What year was it? 98, I think, or 97, something like that.
I thought it was later than that. I didn't realize it was...
It was the late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, because I made Umrah in 99, because I was there when the year changed.
Okay.
I was in the Haram when the year changed to 2000.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so
you made Hajj a second time, right? Or
no, I made Umrah in
okay.
Ramadan.
Okay, I did that.
The Imam Khalil told me if I made Umrah in Ramadan, it counted as a second
That's
Hajj.
And this is when you went with the group of sisters from here.
Right, the one who I still know.
Yeah,
that lives
exactly.
in Germantown, right? No, I went on a... yeah, it was a group, yeah. It was some name I got, some guy. Oh, it was terrible. They were awful. I had to get out of there. I mean, they had us in a room about half this size, about 8 of us, and they were cooking African food right next to the door, and we were all jammed in there. There wasn't even room to make salad or anything, and I was the oldest one. I was in my 60s then, and they were all much younger than me, and I was getting sick. I could see it. I was going to be sick. And I have to get out of here. So I had my little credit card, so I went off one day, and I'm looking around where I could stay. And I found a place, and I was going to get, and I went back and I told Fauzia is her name, Fauzia, come on with me, because we had met in the train station in Baltimore. Her sister lived here. She was visiting her sister, so we had been together through the whole thing. And I said, come on, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to be sick. I'm eating this African food. I don't know what it is. They're boiling great big hunks of meat. And all this. It smells terrible. I'm not a total vegetarian, but not that much of a meat eater. So she went to the guy who was running the
travel agency,
the tour,
right?
And said, she's going to leave. And go get another place, and I guess he thought maybe I'd sue him or something, right? So he found us another room, just the two of us.
So you didn't have to spend any extra money?
No.
Oh, Allah.
No, he found us another room. I guess he thought, I better do something right by this poor old girl. And so we had our own room. I remember there was a Saudi couple that were right across the hall, and we shared a bathroom. And otherwise, we had our own place with a little hot plate, because she used to make tea for me, God bless her. And, so I didn't have to get sick.
and speaking, again, this is being recorded, so forgive me, but this is the trip where you had your menses, and so you actually had the opportunity.
That was when I made Hajj.
Oh, it was in Hajj. It was actually
that was when I made Hajj, because I'm staying with the Shafi family, and we're
Shami?
The Shami family.
Okay.
The Shami family, and they would come into the Haram every evening usually, and that one particular night, I had it was after the Hajj.
Okay.
It was after the Hajj, and everybody hangs around for a week or so if they can, and so it was after the Hajj, and we went there, and the place where you run back and forth, called the Sa'i, they call it, I think,
right, from between
Safa and Marwa. That's not really inside of the mosque, and that's not considered in the Haram.
Absolutely.
It's outside of it.
Right.
So they said, come on, no, you come with us, you can sit in there and watch all of our bags, which is what I did.
Right.
They all left their bags with me, and I sat there, and it had you could sit down, and you would be, just look above. You could see above. So I could sit there and I could see the whole thing.
Right.
I watched the whole thing.
And that's why I asked. That's the only reason I brought it up, because you spoke before about how big of an impact that had.
Oh, amazing. It was like, because, I told you, I made Hajj on the rebound from that mosque and that whole experience. It was like, let me go to the center. Let me go to the place where they started all this whole thing and see if I can't get straight, And so I was, in that kind of mode, looking and seeing, because, some of the things you see on Hajj are not all that great,
Right.
People misbehave all the time,
Of course.
and human beings, what can I say? But anyways, that was what made it clear for me. I knew then that for 5 or 10 minutes, 5 times a day, we're together.
Mm.
We stop the world and we're together. And it's going on all around the world according to how the sun is going. It's like a wave that's going around the world constantly. Constantly going. And that was it. It's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, I knew from that moment on that nobody was going to push me off the mark anymore. You know, that I had my mark now, and you know, no Salafi, Sufi, Sunni, Shia, none of that was going to take me off of that mark. You know, of praying to Allah, of turning to Allah, remembering Allah, and everything else would just fall in place.
Alhamdulillah.
And and I wandered around for another few years before I found Imam Khalil.
And this is exactly where I wanted to take the conversation to, is that, you know, going straight into I know, and I'm pre-framing this kind of in my remembrance of your story. You know, you entered Islam, you had your experiences in Tangier. Then you came to America and you entered Islam, seeing people just try to figure things out for themselves.
Right.
Got to go back to Tangier, live there for a year, breathing Islam in the culture.
Right.
Come back to Baltimore, have these Salafi movement. It's taking hold on the East Coast. No, that's not real Islam. Yeah. Those people in Tangier who have been Muslim for 1,000 years, they don't really know Islam.
Exactly.
And so
breaking my heart,
and
you know.
So, you know, you have to do it our way or it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so then you go on hajj to try to figure this whole thing out for yourself. And you have that awakening moment, if you will. And then you come back and you're still searching, where is the spirit of Islam?
Right.
So how did you find tasawwuf?
Well, I guess I had, during the New Age thing, there was some Sufi threads going through, you know, because people discovered the poets.
Yeah.
They discovered Rumi and Hafiz and, you know, and some of the Indian poets and whatnot. So there was, nobody knew what it was. You know, I mean, even today people don't know what it is. Muslim people don't know what it is.
Unfortunately.
They just throw that word around, you know. I mean, that's why I don't like to use it that much, you know, because it means whatever somebody wants to think it means, you know. It
good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. Whatever they think it means.
Exactly. So I'd always been looking for that sort of thing. You know, I'd always been looking to that side of things. I mean, I had to. Who else was going to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I couldn't just read the Quran, even the Yusuf Ali Quran with all those wonderful commentaries. You know, I'm going to have to stop.
No, it's good, and that's the nature of these conversations. Is that it brings the old us back out sometimes.
Right.
No?
Wow. Truly, yeah.
We've spoken about some of this before, and even the fact that you came out of the Christianity that you came out of, the atmosphere that you came out of, the family that you came out of, a very musical family. You know, this puts you on a path seeking that spiritual aspect of Islam that is missing in so many of our communities.
That's right.
And so what you were saying before we paused was that, you know, your Islam from the very beginning was always a seeking or searching for the spiritual aspects.
Oh, yeah.
Is that...
Oh, absolutely. Because the Christianity I grew up with, not that I wasn't aware of it that way, you know, but because of the way my family was, there was a separation, a knowledge of the church being one thing, and your life not necessarily being something else, your spiritual life, your understanding of God and how, your prayer and, the whole meaning of all of that was not necessarily the same thing. That the church had its purpose, but you had to live your life. I mean, it's like the medical profession. You have to take care of your own health. The medical profession's not going to take care of your health. They're there to give you when you need something special or you don't know, or, they have some kind of framework for you to go to find something out. But you live your life every day, so you have to have your own understanding of these things. You can't be, you don't, I mean, this is the thing that the Roman Catholic Church, they have all these people who live in the religion,
right.
And celibate people who live in the religion, I don't know how big a thing it is anymore, whether they have as many as they used to in the old days, but that's sort of what's kept them alive in a certain way. The framework has grown bigger than the people who are practicing it. That imperial thing that was there from the beginning, really, and is still there, but in my way of understanding Christianity, it was always a kind of mystical, spiritual thing. I don't know that I knew that if you put those words to it, because we weren't big on like reading the Bible a lot, because when you went to church, they always read the Bible. You read the gospel and you read the lesson, and so the teachings of Jesus was there, but we weren't. My mother's family were Methodists. They were Bible people. They read the Bible all the time and all of that. But
you it was prayerful.
We were prayerful. We said our grace before every meal. My dad, he prayed when he got up in the morning. I mean, I used to see him kneeling by the bed in the morning and night. I mean, and we went to church a lot, He liked going to church, and we started as young going to church a lot and all of that. And being in that atmosphere and being, just having God in your life and prayer in your life, the higher power, it was there, and there were certain ethical and moral things that were part of it. Like, I think I mentioned, we never were allowed to gossip. We couldn't come home and tell tales about our friends, or, my mom couldn't tell tales about our neighbor. It wasn't allowed, things like that, and, you couldn't take something from the 5 and dime store, if you got away, you just couldn't do immoral, unethical things without being called up for it.
Right.
It was just part of, you had to be good people, you had to be nice, you have good manners. I remember your wife telling me, good manners are such an important part with your kids. I mean, it really is. I'm just so amazed when Muslim people don't act with good manners.
It confuses me.
I know. Where is it?
The Prophet ﷺ said, I was only sent to perfect good manners.
Right. Right, and I went through a period of kind of my radical period, I call it, where I was with some people that didn't have good manners, and I probably did some things I shouldn't have done. I was with them. I mean, this is what happens. You're with the wrong kind of people. You pick up bad habits, But I quick got over it, I mean, it didn't stay with me. I was, very sorry and apologetic to God or to nobody else, But, that was a part of life, my life growing up. So, when I met these folks in Tangier, they had that. They had good manners. They were very moral, ethical people, And,
except for the hashish.
Well, exactly. But he didn't start out making his living that way. It was an American who got him into that. Isn't that funny how these things go? I mean, it's so, that whole thing, But even the smoking of in Morocco, I mean, it had a spiritual element to it.
Right.
It wasn't just getting high or playing, and dancing and singing rock music or none of
Right.
It had. I ever tell you about that? The what was his name? Abdul Qadir. Ever tell you about Abdul Qadir? He had a tea house, a coffee house, tea house. It was famous because there was this very rich American lady, Barbara Hutton.
Okay.
You may have heard of her. I think Cary Grant was married to her once. But she was very rich, and she had a villa in Tangier overlooking, the Straits. It was well known because along that road that went up to the Casbah was the wall, and it was always whitewashed with some blue at the top or something. Like everything in Tangier was blue and white, right? So this cafe was up on the hill, that same hill going up to the Casbah, and it overlooked her house. So it was called Cafe Barbara or something like that. They called it Cafe Barbara, I think. Anyway, this guy, Abdul Qadir, he was the one who Ahmed learned from.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy with the pipe. And people used to go to him. He was like a counselor, a psychological, emotional counselor.
Right.
And people would come to him with various problems. Marital problems, work problems, problems with children, different things. They would come, and he would sit there with them and give them the pipe, and lots of very hot, sweet mint tea to drink because you don't want to get stoned.
Right.
See, that's what the tea is for. You don't want to get stoned. You want to be alert. And to get the benefit of what this is doing to your brain. Your brain is changing. It's causing your brain to go through some changes.
Right.
They probably know more about the brains than some of these neurosurgeons, But anyway, so he would counsel these people while under the influence. I mean, they're learning now that people can do that.
Right, of course. They're doing studies at Hopkins on LSD and everything else, shrooms and everything. But
and then after a day or two, he'd turn them off. No more.
Right.
You've had your counseling now. You've had enough. Now go and see if you can deal with this problem. Whatever. I mean, this is amazing, isn't it? And this was who Ahmed learned from.
MashaAllah.
And this is how he was able to deal with all these hippie-dippies coming through from Europe and America with all their various problems and issues, I mean, he would get them just enough stoned, that their defenses were down kind of thing. And he could pour a little knowledge into their brains kind of thing,
Give them a little wisdom and send them on their way.
Something new to think about, a different opening, a different idea, and whether it helps for in the long run or not, only God knows. But, this is what any counselor does, He tries to give somebody an opening, and then they have to take it from there, You don't live with them, So, and like Sheikh Abdul Qadir, in the story, he ends up bringing the hashish back to Ahmed.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, he says, it gave me up.
That was he put that in the introduction to one of his books, right?
Yeah, it's just so interesting, and I'm afraid those times have gone. I don't know if anything like that is happening. I mean, the world seems such a different place. I don't know.
Well, no, it's so materialistic, it's lost that sense of wonder and awe, and it's unfortunate, but I do believe, of course you can still go on journeys and you can still, have your own, mystery in these experiences, but I think that the world has lost its sense of wonder, its sense of awe, and has become so materialistic that it's just like hustle and bustle no matter what, so it's sad, unfortunately. But again, I want to, when you came back, you were still looking for this in Islam. Right?
Well, I was let's see, when I came back in 1970, to be with my mom, right? I came back to be with my mom, trying to think of the leave taking, how that all went about. You know, because that was a very kind of a rough period in there. I can't remember how it all went down. Because, you know, I had gotten involved with Randy Weston at that time. You know, the musician Randy Weston. Mm-hmm. He had a club. Well, he opened a club. He lived up the street from the Magic House, Mustafa's Magic House. He lived in a house that belonged to some French woman. He was like a gigolo, you know. He always had some rich woman paying his way, right? And, well, you know, poor musicians, you know, what can we say? But this is how I got to know a lot of musicians, you know. Oh, Lord. But anyway, he had this club. I remember he was trying to get this club open, you know, and he was famous in Tangier because he's real tall. He's like about 6'8" or something. He's a giant, you know. He's this really big guy, you know. They gave him the name Tariq from Jabal al Tariq, you know, the mountain. You know, he called him Tariq because he was so tall. And we had a little fling, you know, but I could see that it wasn't going to go anywhere because I wasn't rich. You know? It was as simple as that. And he wasn't really. He was sort of Islam, you know. He was Islamic, you know, people like that, right? He was Islamic, but he, you know, how deep into it, you know, and he was this big piano player, you know. He was really a serious guy, you know. I mean, a lot of musicians are like that, you know. I mean, and that's great, that's fine, you know. They make beautiful music, and God bless them for it. But, you know, and I could tell that it wasn't going to go anywhere when his 19-year-old son started hitting on me.
Oh, my.
Right. I said, boys, I've been going out with your dad. I'm not going to go out with you, you know. So anyway, but that's what was going on in Tangier at the time, you know. And, you know, I met him because I had this really nice record player, you know, that played nice discs. And he knew Mustafa. Everybody knew Mustafa, right? And he had made this record in Paris. A nice record, I have it. It's one of my favorites. And although I don't play his stuff much anymore, but this record particularly was a good one. And he heard he didn't have a record player at the time. And Mustafa said, well, Rashida's So he came knocking on my door to play his record on my record player. That's how I met him. But anyway, you know, so that was what was going on there in Tangier at the time. And he did open up this club. But I think he sort of expected me to become a groupie. Mm. You know? Right. And I wasn't going to be a groupie. Right. I didn't want anything to do with that, you know? I mean, you know, I met him. We became friends, you know. There was a little bit of a fling there, you know. He had a nice house, and we used to sit on the deck, you know, overlooking the Bay of Tangier and all of that. But, you know, I could see he wasn't serious. Right. And I wasn't going to be a groupie, you know. So I just had to leave that whole scene. And that was kind of hard for me because by that time, that was a big happening in Tangier. You know, he was, you know, Mustafa had Ahmed had his shop, and all those same people were mixing around. And, you know, everybody was sort of mixing around, and they all knew each other. And I knew most of them, but that just wasn't my cup of tea. Right. You know? And so I think that was when I left. Carol and Don left because they were living up the street from me. You know, the couple that was from Roland Park, mm-hmm. You know, the one who taught at the Waldorf school. They were living up the first they left, and then somebody else left. And I guess it just seemed like it was time for me to go.
When you got back, was you able to find that kind of spirituality here anywhere?
Oh, not really. No. It was rough for me for a while because I came back and I went to live with my mom. We hadn't lived together for 20 years or more, you know. And I was a girl then, and I'm a woman now, and I've been around the world, etc. And my mom is still this girl from the Eastern Shore. with these kind of white supremacist ideas bragging around in her head. And I remember one of my good friends came to the house, and she's giving me, with brown skin, she's giving me a dirty look out of the side of her face, you know. And after that, I said, look, we've got to get over this right now. You know, we got to talk about this. And the first year that we lived together, there were quite a few scenes like that. That, you know, I mean, she hurt my feelings and would say things, and I would get hurt and cry, and then this and this. We, you know, it was learning to live together again from two different angles. She, you know, Mom, and I'm this, and I'm a Muslim now around the world. She doesn't know what Muslim is. And she just thinks I'm foreign. It's a foreign thing, you know. That's all she knows about it. It's a bunch of foreigners, you know. But, you know, eventually we became really good friends. And she loved Islam too. She used to love my prayers and you know, a lot of things she just saw in them. She, you know, because she grew up a religious girl, you know, so she was a believer, and she had her own understanding of all of that, and so she could see that this was real with me. It was meant something, and she eventually came to accept it and everything. But I never found... I used to go over to Masjid al-Rahma from time to time. Went to some classes over there. Met my dear friend Zahara, the Moroccan lady. Did you know Zahara?
I did.
Yeah, because she worked all around there. She lived in one of those little apartments up there, married this black American guy. And, yeah, she was a darling girl, you know, beautiful girl, yeah. And... But, you know, I never really felt at home over there somehow. I mean, there were a lot of nice people, and I went over from time to time, and it was good. You know, I enjoyed it and all of that. But I never felt like this was really the place that I was a part of. This is where I was going to be settled, you know. It was... Maybe it was too far away, and et cetera, you know. It just... You know, so I just didn't have any place until... And then my mom got sick, you know. She had that terrible accident, and I had to stop working eventually and take care of her. And so for 4 years, we were just there, you know. People would come and visit, and there were a lot of really nice people in our lives that helped out a lot, you know. You know, when it first happened, and I brought her home... she was in like a rehab place, you know, that Jewish place over there. I can't think of the name of it now, but they were nice. But anyway, there was nothing more they could do. So, and I wasn't going to put her in any place. I had promised her I would take care of her if it was humanly possible. I had said to her at some point, if it's humanly possible, you will be with me at home. But anyway, so I decided I was going to do it, and we brought her home. But I had to get up and turn her and position her. All night long, every 3 hours. So I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't get any sleep, really. And I'm trying to work. I'm going to work every day, and I'm paying somebody to stay with her during the day. And it's coming out that I'm paying her almost as much as I'm making, and I can't sleep. And it just became... And I'm telling you, brother, I couldn't have survived if it wasn't for my salat. If it wasn't for that prayer rug. Because I would get on that prayer rug, and I would moan and cry like a wounded animal. How am I going to do this, God? What can I do? I can't do this. It's too hard. How can we do this? You know, I would just moan and cry and help us find a way. And you know, the first month or two, you know, it was just like that. I got one of the aides from the nursing home where I was working, and to come like pay her to sit with her at night and do the turning in position, so I could at least get maybe 1 or 2 nights sleep during the week, you know. And finally, I figured it out that we could manage on her income. You know, she got a very nice income, you know, because my father had been with the B&O, so she had a really nice Social Security that came from the railroad, you know. And so we could figure it out, and the rent was fairly reasonable, and this and this and this, and we owned the car and everything. So I figured it out that if we were very careful, and Michael and Steve helped us out a little bit, we could manage, and I could come and stay home, which is what I did. I finally quit the job. And as soon as I did that and started figuring things out, I had the time now, to figure things out. I wasn't just running and trying to, do everything at once. Things started falling into place. It was amazing. First, because she had a colostomy because she'd had her rectum removed and she had a colostomy bag. So that made it easier. But she still had to have a diaper. Then the doctor, I knew this doctor from the nursing home, because I used to have to go around and do all the medical records and blah, blah, all this stuff. So I knew all the doctors that used to come in from time to time. And they would come into my office, too. And this one I knew really well, Dr. Green, and he was really nice, and we would have all kinds of interesting conversations. And I asked him one day, would you come and visit my mom? Would you be her doctor? He said, sure, I'll do it. Find a doctor that'll come to your home today. It was a miracle that he agreed to do it, So when he came, he said, look, I can make this easier for you. I'm going to put her in a catheter. So he put her in a catheter, which meant I no longer had to change diapers all the time. And she had come out of that nursing home with a terrible bed sore. And I had a water pick. I'd fill it with saline solution. I would clean her bed sore every day, and pack it with gauze and everything until I got rid of that. And then he got me one of these air mattresses that's on a motor. You know that kind?
Yeah.
It fills up with air and then it changes. And so I didn't have to turn and position her all night long. So I got able to sleep through the night, again. So little by little, it was like a miracle. Things would happen. Our life was still difficult. Of course, my mom wasn't going to get well. It took me a while to realize that. I was determined I was going to make her well. You know how that is, But, but I knew I couldn't, she wasn't going to get well. But we managed our life. We got so we could manage our life. I had to get her in a Hoyer lift and put her in the wheelchair and, do all kinds of things. She loved hymns. We used to sing hymns all the time. That was our prayer time. We would sing all those Methodist hymns, right? Billy Graham and all of that, But she loved it, and she could remember those. Even though her brain had gotten smashed on one side, she could sing all the hymns. We go through the hymns, we go through the Broadway musicals. Oh, what a beautiful morning. We knew all those, she knew all those songs. Because whenever we would go out driving together, we would sing. And she taught me how to sing harmony with her. And we would sing songs and I would harmonize with her. So it turned out okay. It's amazing. But, God knows how I got through all that. But that prayer rug. I tell people now, if they're going through something, I say, get down on your prayer rug. Put your head down on that prayer rug and just beg and scream and cry and ask God to help you, any way you can, sometimes that you have to do that. And life gets to be weigh you down so much, you don't know how you're going to get up, and you have to turn to God. You have to turn to Allah. And if you're a Muslim, you should know that somewhere inside of you. You know that.
Absolutely. It's, you met Sheikh Khalil after your mom passed away.
Well, it was really beautiful. I had over a period of this time, finding out how to deal with this issue, taking care of my mom and the whole thing, I got different aides and I found different people. And Baltimore County was very good. They used to send me an aide 2 mornings a week because I wanted somebody to come to her on the mornings to give her a bath, help me get her into the Hoyer lift and, get her dressed and, help me get her ready for the day. That's what we needed. That's what I needed. And I had somebody that would do that almost every day. And so I had found that. And then somebody told me, I don't know how I found out, but I found out that there was this Muslim girl who did this kind of work. who worked as a nursing aide, and she'd worked in nursing homes and whatnot. And I got in touch with her and asked her if she could come and help me. And so she did. She started coming to help me. Samira.
Mm.
No, not Samira. Sumeya.
Sumeya.
Yeah, Sumeya. And she's the one who told me about Masjid al-Nur. She came one day, I remember, she couldn't come all the time because she had a family, husband, blah, blah. And so, but she could come, especially like on weekends, I would like her to come so I could run out, do something,
right.
So I could do something for an hour or so. But she came one day and she said, "Oh, Rashidah, I found this little mosque. You're going to love it," she said. Masjid al-Nur, you're going to love this place, she said. And, she went on, and that was the first thing after my mom died. As soon as I could get myself together, it took me maybe a couple of weeks before I could get myself together after that. And I went over, I don't think maybe she took me. Maybe I went with her, And, of course, I met Radwan right away. She was the one I met first. And it was funny, the imam, I wasn't sure about him at first, he's just another guy, right, up there, preaching to us girls and taking over everything, pushing us around, etc. So I wasn't sure about him. I only heard the khutbah. I never hadn't, but nobody had bothered to really show them around. I don't know if I told you this, but nobody had showed them around. And here they had been here. This was like, I don't know, January, February, or, early my mom died in January, so this month maybe was like early spring or something like that, May or something like that nobody had showed them around the town. They didn't. I said, because I remember asking Radwan, has anybody taken you down to the harbor? Have you seen the harbor? And she said, no, nobody's taken us anywhere. They were sort of stuck. And I said, oh no, well, I'll come, we made a date like next Tuesday or whatever. I'll come and pick you up and take you down to the harbor and we'll have lunch, and I'll show you around. And so, I came that day like 10:30 or whatever time, and, they were upstairs. Did you go to that place when they were living on that upstairs place? Yeah. So I went up there and, she let me in, and I said, well, come on, let's go. She said, oh, we have to wait for the imam. I said, the imam is coming? I couldn't believe it. Because after my experience, even in Masjid al-Rahma, that sheikh over there, whenever he talked to you like this. Well, okay, Rashidah, that's good. He never look at you in your eye or your face. I don't know, in the world, I'm an old woman practically, But anyway, I said, the imam is coming? Yeah, the imam wants to come too. I said, well, great, So there we get in my little car, and, he gets in the back seat, and we go down to the harbor. And so I said, well, let's do it up. So we got tickets, and we went on the Star Spangled Banner trip down to, Fort McHenry, on the boat. You can take a boat down there, and they play the Star Spangled Banner. And I said, you're getting the whole trip of America now, because nobody, can you imagine, none of these doctors, that brought them over here have bothered to really show them around.
They didn't even think about it. SubhanAllah.
I mean, they had to get an American girl before they had any idea. So I remember that we came back and we got some lunch and we sat outside, and there were some people from South America. I remember they had those South American flutes that are so nice, and they were playing music and everything there, and it was really lovely. We had a really nice time. And he was so friendly and talking to me, and like he was, he didn't treat me any special way. I wasn't in any category. I was just his friend, And, from that moment on, we became friends. And from that day, everything changed for me after that day. It was like, wow, this is the real person. This is the real guy. He's the real sheikh, He's our imam, but he really has that. He has that knowledge. He has that attitude. He has that presence. He has that, you know, I mean, my friends in Morocco, they had something, especially Ahmed. You know, he had a lot of presence, but he was doing a different kind of job. You know, he was dealing with different kind of people. He wasn't trying. I mean, he was trying to teach them Islam, but he was hoping to teach them Islam.
Right.
They didn't come to him to learn Islam. He was just doing it sort of by the way, and here's some Islam for you. You know? But here was somebody who really knew what it was about. I mean, it was like, wow, I've arrived, I've landed, sort of, you know. I mean, from that time on, it was just love. You know, all the people I met, I was just in love with them all, and you know, it was, yeah, and from then on, you know, I because I could talk to him, he was the first Muslim person, because all the studies that I had ever done of tasawwuf were just books I happened to find, or things like that, you know, little things here and there, you know, that I would just discover, you know. And read on my own and try to. Now, Ahmed had talked about Abdul Qadir Jilani.
Right.
You know, I had learned about him from her. He used to say that he had all the beautiful women in his place serving people. You know, that they all wanted to be his disciples, right? You know. But you know, but anyway, you know, I never had anybody who really practiced it. You know, and that, you know, had that depth. I think that's what it is. It's that depth, you know. I mean, the Quran tells us that there are levels to learning and there are levels to understanding. But I don't think people really absorb that.
No, subhanAllah.
You know, they stay at that, you know.
They stay at the I know, and they don't become.
Is that what it is?
I that's what I see.
Yeah.
Where people can talk about it, they can teach it, they can argue, but being is something else, you know. And then you have the other group that's their essence, that's who they are, but they never take the time to learn. And so you have these two sides. Sheikh Khalil, he was, and he knew.
Yeah.
So
yeah. The knowledge was there. I mean, it had transformed in all the ways that we get it, you know, through information, through studying, through, you know, all of that, to the knowledge, to the place where it was there, and he could get to it. That's wisdom, I guess, when you can get to the knowledge whenever you need it, you know. And he could get to it. I mean, seeing him at the Jewish Community Center and things like that, you could see these other, you know, this rabbi or this minister, they were giving you some interesting story about where they were coming from. But the imam was giving you knowledge. You know, it was on a different level entirely, you know. And some people, it just goes right by. Yeah. You know, the in the ear and out, like they say, you know. I mean, but I felt it from the beginning, because I had tried to learn from different men, you know, sheikhs and people that were supposed to be knowledgeable, coming from Pakistan, Egypt, whatever, you know. But some of them were very nice people. But they weren't trained teachers and scholars of Islam in that way. They had another job, you know, they were physicians or whatever, you know. So, you know, you learned some things from them, but they were not going to be your imam, you know, your guide and your leader, you know. And you know, this was the first imam I really had, is Imam Khalil. You know, and of course, you know, Redwan, right there.
I was going to say, Redwan, see, people look at her as, you know, the imam's wife.
Oh, she was much more.
She was a sheikh in her
Exactly.
own right, you know.
Exactly.
Not just knowledge, but tasawwuf.
Exactly. Just how to be, the depth of it all. You know, I remember one day I went up to get her, you know, I used to take them shopping or take her here or there, and I went up to get her, and she was crying, you know. And you know, we sat down, and what's going on? Why are you crying? Well, she's missing her kids. She's missing her family over there, you know. I said to her, you know, I said, well, why don't you just get on a plane and go back for a week? just say hi and everything, love on everybody, and then you'll feel better, and then you come back. She said, oh, I could never leave the imam. I would never leave the imam. So, when she said that and explained that to me, I felt that from her. I could see that they were attached in an important way that most people, like you say, did not know, because they just saw a traditional married couple or something, And there was a depth there, because she had been a great teacher of her own back there, and she taught for many years,
Taught Sierra. She taught the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She would lead the women in dhikr groups, because in Abu Noor, what they do, if I'm not mistaken, I could forget, but I believe it's Thursdays after Asr, they lock the masjid. No men are allowed in, and it's just the women.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
she would lead those gatherings. And she would teach in those gatherings. And she came here and she taught little kids how to read Arabic. And people think, oh, she's just like, no, this is a woman who taught scholars back home. And subhanAllah, when the sheikh started to lose his hearing, and, he would try to communicate something, she'd get behind him and she'd just start talking and give me my own lesson from her, because he,
right, exactly.
It was, but she was an amazing person that, again, people just looked at, but these two people, and they were very human, but they lived what they knew. They absolutely lived what they knew. And I can honestly say that they're two of the people who came closest to when the word saint is used, they embodied that. They embodied that. No,
they
absolutely.
were really ones,
I've been honored to meet many people who are awliya, right? Honestly, Allah has blessed me to meet, I'd say at least a dozen people, which is a lot these days. But I mean specifically when we say saint in English, that idea of what a saint is supposed to be, they were that.
That's right.
They certainly were, mashallah.
They were angelic people.
Yeah.
Yes, they were. Yeah, they were. And where they came from, I don't know. You studied at the Noor Institute and mosque and all of that, so you know what that was about more than I do. I just know what I heard through the grapevine, really. And some people had not good things to say about it, and I couldn't understand why, But, there's Salafi type people everywhere.
No, the reason that they didn't like it is because Sheikh Ahmed Kuftar, who was the Grand Mufti of Syria.
Right.
Now imagine, he was close to the Assad family. He was the advisor to the ruler. Now, this is the thing. Imagine the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court having no relation and not being willing to have a conversation with the president. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, of course. Oh, well, I understand that very well. In fact, I've read about it. So I know. I studied that. I didn't know. I wasn't one of those people. I was always, oh, really? You feel that way? And I would change the subject because I didn't want to hear it, really.
The idea is that our ulama are not supposed to be close to politicians.
Well, and in that case, he was putting his own life in jeopardy.
Right. No, absolutely.
Because people like that, they can turn on a dime, So, no, he was very wise that way he was able to keep his institute open and do what he wanted to do.
He benefited the Muslims throughout Syria, and so there was a great wisdom in what he did, even though people didn't like it. But alhamdulillah, his ability to host, and this is another reason people didn't like him, because he would bring people, Jimmy Swaggart. He would bring, what's his name, Louis Farrakhan. He would bring them and let them speak.
Exactly.
Right? Let them speak and let the Muslims, 6,000 people in attendance, he would let the Muslims hear what they have to say.
Alhamdulillah.
And, when there's mistakes, he'd correct the mistakes. And that showed wisdom. You don't have to be closed-minded. And you don't have to be afraid. When you hear what they have to say, we have the truth.
Well, absolutely. That's it. Like I said, I got it rather after yesterday. I got to a point where I said, "Okay, I've watched all this enough." It's enough. You reminded me of something in here. I know what was really going on in the community. because after I saw that, I felt like I understood my friend much better. She came from that dysfunctional society, you know? And I don't know. I mean, that's why, you asked me if about tasawwuf, how I learned it. I mean,